the biggest scam in modern economics isn't a lack of resources, it's who controls the contract. For generations, much of the Western system has been shaped by British-style contract law. You don't have to own the substance to profit from it. You only need the paperwork. Control the terms, control the price. And when you control the price, you can profit twice. Once from the resource itself, and again from the labor it takes to extract, refine, ship, and sell it. This didn't begin yesterday. It's a legacy system. Look back at the British Empire and you'll see a template that still echoes through today's markets. Extract value elsewhere, concentrate wealth here. Britain's rise as a commercial superpower was fueled in part by the Atlantic slave trade. Millions of Africans forcibly transported to provide cheap labor that enriched merchants and accelerated industrial growth. Cities like Liverpool and Bristol became financial engines of that trade. The mechanism wasn't just violence. It was also administration, law, and commercial contracts that turned human lives and natural wealth into assets on a balance sheet. Fast forward, and the headline may have changed, but the playbook is familiar. In the UK today, labor exploitation is not a fringe problem. It's one of the most reported forms of modern slavery. The National Referral Mechanism has repeatedly shown labor exploitation as a lead-in category, and reports describe migrant workers trapped through threats, debt, unsafe conditions, withheld pay, and fear of deportation. That's the uncomfortable truth. Even with laws on the books, the system still produces vulnerable people who feel they can't speak up, and bad actors who know they can get away with it. And this is where the real power hides, not only in resources, but in perception. Because if you can make people believe something is scarce, you can justify a higher price. If you can make the public feel afraid of shortages, afraid of economic threats, afraid of the other side, you can move markets. You can inflate contract values. You can lock in favorable terms. And you can do it while telling a story that sounds responsible. We're just managing risk. We're protecting supply. We're stabilizing the economy. Yet many times the issue isn't true scarcity. It's controlled access. Neo-colonial economics works like this. Poorer nations may have the resources, but wealthier nations and corporations control the contracts, pricing mechanisms, and downstream value. Manufacturing, shipping, insurance, finance, branding. The global South exports raw value. The global North imports profit. The disparity often isn't about geology. It's about governance, leverage, and who writes the terms. Now add media into the equation. Fear sells. Fear mobilizes. Fear distracts. It keeps people arguing about symptoms while the structure stays untouched. If the public believes we're constantly on the edge of crisis, they'll accept inflated prices and tightened control as necessary. Meanwhile, supply chains remain opaque, accountability stays diluted, and exploitation continues quietly in the background, despite transparency guidance and modern legislation that too often lacks teeth in enforcement. And here's the critical point. When a system like that starts losing its grip, it doesn't calmly step aside. It fights. Any power structure that's dominated for a long time will resist change. It will frame new approaches as dangerous. It will push nostalgia. It will cling to how things have always been done. But watching old systems battle emerging ones is like watching someone insist on sending a letter across the country in the 1950s, when an email or a phone call would close the deal in minutes. Yes, a letter has emotion, weight, history, but the world has changed. Speed matters, adaptation matters, and clinging to outdated methods doesn't make you principled, it makes you slow, while everyone else moves. This is bigger than politics. It's about consciousness. For centuries, institutions helped shape the public mind to accept hierarchy as normal. Who should lead? Who should obey? What is proper? What is allowed? In Britain, the Church of England historically held deep influence in education and social norms, helping define values, loyalty, and identity. Today, people are questioning that legacy, especially when it comes to what guides our children's worldview. Because the question isn't only, what are we being taught? It's also, what are we being trained to tolerate? If we educate children to obey systems that profit from their future labor while masking exploitation with tradition, we're not preparing them for life. We're preparing them to fit inside a cage. We need something better. Education that builds both inner strength and real-world capability. Spiritual intelligence without religious control. Business literacy without exploitation. A combination that teaches young people how to create value, negotiate fairly, build wealth ethically, and live with meaning. So success doesn't come at the cost of someone else's freedom. That's how you end imperial thinking, not with slogans, but with systems. Not by studying only what's breaking, but by building what replaces it. So here's the call to action. Stop buying the scarcity story without reading the contract. Ask who benefits from the fear. Demand transparency in supply chains. Support leaders, policies, and businesses that protect workers, not just profits. And if you're a parent, an educator, or a community builder, push for a curriculum that teaches both practical prosperity and spiritual grounding, so the next generation doesn't inherit the trauma of outdated power. Because the imperial system doesn't end when people argue about it.